Hello, thank you all for being here, and welcome to the January 17th, 2023, which is still hard to say, meeting of the Milford, Connecticut Planning and Zoning Board. If we could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. Thank you. Meg, if you could please call the roll.
Ms. Austin. Present. Mr. Castagnoli.
Here.
Mr. Hirsch.
Here.
Mr. Cater.
Present.
Mr. Collegian.
Present.
Mr. Moore.
Present.
Mr. Mortimer. Okay. Mr. Sadi.
Present.
Mr. Zaharidis.
Present.
And Chairman Quish.
I am also here. So first order of business is a public hearing, closed by February 7th, vote by April 13th. Proposed regulation change 2210, petition of the Planning Zoning Board for a change to Milford Zoning Regulations, Article 3, Section 3.1.1.7 regarding accessory apartments. This is being held open from a previous public hearing. What I would ask, David, is if you would give us sort of a recap of where we started and where we are now.
Well, the last meeting, you opened the public hearing on the proposed 22-10 for accessory apartment dwelling units. You had opened the public hearing, got your testimony. One or two people brought up parking as a particular, might be an issue. So between the last meeting and this meeting, you've been provided by staff a proposed tweak to the regulation, amendment to the regulation, that if you so desire, you can add it, which would require that one parking spot be provided for every ADU that's allowed.
Okay, thank you. If you would get closer to the mic. I know we've had some issues with our public address system, and I'm told the mayor's office has brought in some experts and hopefully have made it better. So the hearing has been kept open, and people are going to be welcome to speak. I think it will probably be important if someone has expressed an opinion before, it's already in the record, and I don't think it's going to really inform the board much to say the same thing over and over again. I'm glad everyone's here, and I think that it's been a good exercise in public involvement in decisions. But again, we all have been here a number of times, or most of us have, so I don't think it's really adding much to say the same thing again and again, but if someone wants to speak, that's okay. For the board, I think what we did is we wanted to keep this open to give us a chance to read all the letters and emails that were sent in, to give us time to consider what they said. And so, assuming that we've done that, or this is our time, that we have had to do that, and so that is done. If someone else would like to speak, if there's questions or comments from the board first, if not, then we'll reopen the public comment section. If there's questions or comments from the board, then now's a good time. If not, I would invite the public to come up, and again, in mind that we've probably heard a lot of what's already been said, so keep it brief if you could.
My name is Bruce Barrett. I spoke before, so I'm just going at 47 Point Beach Drive, Milford. I'm going to wish. Oh, my name is Bruce Barrett. I did speak last time, so I'm at 47 Point Beach Drive, Milford. I'm going to wish you a happy Martin Luther King Day +1. Dr. King said the arc of the moral universe bends toward justice, and that's what we're doing, right? That's what creating zoning regulations is about, to make this a just and good society and keep working it. So thank you. I won't speak any others because I know other people have to come up. So thanks very much for doing this work.
Thank you, sir.
Hello, I'm Michael Blake, and I'm here with my wife, Wiley Blake, 65 Governors Avenue. And I saw the proposed regulations for ADUs, and it says that they're not allowed for detached structures, and it just seems like an arbitrary restriction. We have a detached garage. We also have an 81-year-old mother-in-law that we want to move in there, and it would be a lot easier for us if we could build a little mother-in-law apartment above our detached garage. But right now, as the proposed regulations read, we can't do that, and it's going to be a much more expensive situation to do something different. So it just seems to me a little arbitrary, and I don't know if you guys have any reasoning behind that, why an ADU cannot be put on a detached garage. I would love to hear that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Teresa Eek, 47 Point Beach Drive. Thank you all for being here and for volunteering your time. I spoke last time, I'm not going to do it again, but we do have information that is in response to some of the issues that were raised last time. This is about the parking, and we also have a lot of lovely photographs of current ADUs and where their cars are parked. None of them on the street, so I will put these over here.
Yes, thank you.
I'm Stephanie Ellison. I am a local real estate broker, and I'm so happy we're here to talk about this finally, because I know over the years this has been an issue.
Excuse me, yeah, if you could just give your address also for the record.
Certainly.
Thank you.
It's 5 Schooner Lane in Milford. And we've had these issues over the years, and I think that the nature of the Airbnbs has really opened up this discussion to make it more favorable. I think the fact that they would be leases make the situation more stable and make it a much better situation for everyone. So I'm definitely in favor.
Thank you.
My name is Joe Samansek. I live at 61 Governors Avenue in Milford. Just a couple other things. I don't know if it ever came up with any kind of historical commissions or districts, that if there has to be any, is there any concern from them that there would be any kind of certain historical districts, they have input when new structures or additions or modifications are made. I didn't see anything in here about that. I don't know if they have come in and given, I haven't been to all these meetings, I don't know if they've come in and given any input for that. Another thing, I'm wondering that, we have a fairly large portion. I looked at the zoning map this morning or yesterday, and a very large portion of the zoning in Milford is classified as single-family residential. So now we're changing. It seems like a very large change. What you're basically saying is that anyone that has a single family now can be a multifamily. So it seems disingenuous to say that these areas are still single-family residential when you could have multiple families living on them. I know that you're trying to put that into this the zone and say, well, it's an accessory apartment. But for people that are living here or people that are coming in and saying, well, I'm going to live in a single-family residential area, it's not really true. It seems like you would need to have an entirely new zone, some kind of, something between multifamily and single-family to be more descriptive. So I was just throwing that out there. It seems, doesn't seem to conform to the language of existing zoning to say these, all these areas are still single family. And I think that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Deborah Rowe. My address is 78 Hillside Avenue. By profession, I am an engineer. I have a Master of Science in Engineering from UNH. I'm also a realtor. I also have a license in home improvement as a contractor. I have done many jobs in solar, sustainability, and home improvement additions as well. So I have a well-rounded background to address this subject, and thank you so much for all being here today to talk about this. It's a much-needed change that we needed to do. So a couple of things with what's been proposed, and with the original 21-29, which was Ned Lamont's proposal, the public law that he made, and I understand you opted out. Is that correct? Everybody here opted out for that? No?
Yeah, actually, it's really not interactive, so we don't really do questions, answers, but I think you know the answer anyway.
Okay. So to Mr. Blake's point, I feel like the proposal should include some wording for a structure on the same lot, not so that if you have a detached garage and you have a building above it or beside it, that this should be included in this new proposal. So my wording should suggestive be to locate a building on the same lot and that it not exceed the primary dwelling in square footage. Now, I know it says in the proposed new regulation, 800 square feet. I can't even get a baby grand piano in 800 square feet units. So 800 square feet might be a little small, so I would also suggest increasing that size a little bit, maybe to 1,200. You have some homes here that are over 3,000, 4,000 square feet that have a detached garage that has an apartment above it. So just would like to suggest those couple of changes in this new regulation. Please note. Yeah.
Thank you.
I also have a document from Accessory Dwelling Unit Handbook from California. If you guys have never seen that, I'd like to leave this with someone.
You're welcome to leave it on the table there, and
Thank you.
the board can look at it if they
Thank you.
wish.
Lower that a little here. I'm Diana Pacelli at 124 Wheelers Farms Road. And, well, I support the whole moving forward with the ADUs and the changes and everything that's going on. The only thing that I would put forward is, like is mentioned, increase the space a little bit. Because yes, 800 is small. And I've known some people with their basements and other people who want to change things. And maybe even a little larger than 12 would be good. Because I know that last meeting someone had mentioned that Fairfield has like 15. We don't have to be that big, but definitely a little bit larger because some people's basements are larger, and they fit half a house. So that's all my put in for it, is to definitely increase the size, because 800 is very small. It's like basically would be just like a bedroom and not even, and maybe a bathroom, but not even room for a kitchen or anything else for somebody that might be living in there, for your mother-in-law that might want to come in and be independent, you know? She'd want a nice space where it's not all like completely open, of kitchen and bedroom and living room, all, it's just the newfangled open free space design. She'd want more separation between things, so a little bit bigger space would allow that. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak? Seeing none, if there's no objection, we will close the public. Oh, here we go.
Me again. Hello, Donna Detko, 236 Buckingham Avenue. Last time...
I'm sorry, if you could, the sound system isn't that great yet. If you could, yeah, get closer to the mic, I'd appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Did you hear who I am?
But please do state your name and address for the
Okay.
record.
Donna Detko, 236 Buckingham Avenue. Last time I mentioned that I think the objective of these ADUs is to make sure that there's affordable units, housing units in Milford, to accommodate people that can't afford to live in these $2,000 or $3,000 apartments. So I mentioned that, somebody mentioned that Fairfield has an 8-30G requirement, or an affordable housing requirement in their regulations, and I have it right here, 6.3.8, and it says an accessory apartment may qualify as affordable housing in accordance with the provisions of section 6.3.5 of this regulation, and subject to the design criteria of section 8-30GK of the Connecticut General Statutes as amended. So this is from the Fairfield zoning regulations, and I have copies if you need it or if you'd like to see it. But I think that that will help make sure that people aren't building a McMansion apartment inside their house and renting them out for like thousands of dollars, and we're not achieving our goal as a community. So,
I'm sorry, if you would just leave them on the table. If anyone would like to go pick them up, they will be able to do that.
okay, so with that said, I'm just circling back around and saying that I think that it would be in the town's favor to make sure that they are affordable, because you don't know. People could build these luxury apartments, and it's going to take away from our moratorium on affordable housing, and we want to make sure that our housing stock is appropriate for the purpose, which is affordable. Thank you.
Thank you.
Janet Montalbano, 30 Revere Place. I would just like to speak on the deed restriction issue that came up at the last meeting, possibility. Asking homeowners to put on a 30, 40-year deed restriction on a house that they might not possibly own for that long is, I think, very unattainable. They're not going to go along with that. I, as you know, have an accessory apartment in our house. We've had our parents live there over the years. Obviously, we're not going to be there all that much longer. So asking for a deed restriction would be out of the question. It would also be very difficult trying to sell a house with a deed restriction on it. So as far as affordable housing, I don't think anyone is going to come into, say, my raised ranch accessory apartment and pay $3,000 for an apartment. I think it'll be very reasonably priced if that were the case. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Trista Simoncek, 61 Governors Avenue. And, you know, I think it's a well-intended effort. Everyone's put a lot of thought into it, which I appreciate. And listening to some of the comments tonight, it just triggered some thoughts for me. We're talking about increasing the footprint size. Maybe we need to think about how much green space we have left on homeowners' properties. A lot of these lots across Milford are small. You're looking at third acres or, you know, half acres, and you put an accessory you know, dwelling on top of that. You're really eating up all the green space that exists in this town. And then I have a question too on new construction. If a developer buys a parcel and is going to build a house, can he automatically make it apartments? You know, I just want to be careful that we have some good zoning in here, that doesn't get overshadowed in the work that gets done. So, thanks.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak? Seeing none, does anyone on the board have a problem with closing the public comment section? We're going to close the public comment, but we can still keep the public hearing open to discuss it. And after a motion, we can discuss the motion as well.
You can't close the public comment and keep the public hearing open. You can.
Oh, they're the same thing.
You can.
They're not different.
Right. So you.
Okay.
Yeah,
We're just not going to listen to anybody else except ourselves.
Okay.
Okay. However you want to say it, David. So I would say if anyone on the board would like to speak to the issue, have questions or comments, Mr. Sadie.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you for all attending. Just to talk about some of the things that were discussed tonight. 1,500 square feet was the largest we found. And I believe that we also found some between 300 and 400 square feet. So this is something that we did become aware of. I'm not sure we're aware of any California ADUs, but we're aware of many different things that were out there. There was a discussion that was made last week, and upon reflection, this details the issue of 830G. 830G is completely different, I would suggest, in our assessment what we're doing here tonight, because zoning regulations do not generally apply to 830Gs, where this would be a zoning regulation. And again, after further thought for myself, I don't think it's something that's really feasible to attach to our regulation. And on the issue of parking, I take no position, but I know we did have discussions and we came up with the idea of not increasing parking. And I do know that there was not a complete agreement on the issue of detached or attached, but our recommendation is for attached at this point. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the board? I have a couple things to say. I did consider the parking implications in neighborhoods, especially with smaller neighborhoods. I'm actually in favor of a detached accessory dwelling unit, but I don't see support on the board, or haven't heard any, and I don't really see full-on support from the community, so I won't advocate for that or push for that. But I think the parking issue was listened to, and I think that it will affect neighborhoods, and we do have language in front of us tonight that would, if incorporated in a motion, would add to the 2 units per dwelling in our existing regulations, that if you went and got an accessory dwelling unit, you would need 1 additional parking space. So that is something that's in front of us to consider. One other thing is that there's some language in second paragraph that says that an accessory dwelling unit has to have a common wall, floor, ceiling, and I think the word "or" needs to be in there, because I don't think you need to have a wall and a floor and a ceiling to be contiguous with the primary dwelling unit. And a question about corner lots. David, if you look at the language with regard to front entries and back lots, and corner lots may not be adequately addressed in that. So if you would please take a look at that and see if there's implications there that are important to do at motion time, or if that's administrative. I would appreciate your input. I also have looked at the language with regard to abandoning an accessory dwelling unit, and that it does sort of indicate that there's a lot of work to be done. It's not just take the stove out, which the stove is really the primer on whether it's an accessory dwelling unit or just other space inside your own house. But it talks about taking out some infrastructure, like removing piping or something, and I think that I would like to make sure that if there's an abandonment, it is not necessarily cutting out walls and removing gas pipe, so that if now, a year from now, somebody may decide to have an accessory dwelling unit where one was abandoned and they have a right to do it, now they have an additional expense, which I think would be redundant and inappropriate. So these are like just like little housekeeping things that I've thought up, and again, there's been a number of people who have addressed the concept of the 800 square feet, and is that important? Now, in a 1,200 square foot house, it may be. In a 5,000 square foot house, it may not be. So I think that as we make a motion, if that is considered, whether or not it is if that's important to the board or not, I don't know. It's not that important to me personally. I think that it would depend on the size of the house, whether the accessory dwelling unit could be a certain specific square footage. Other than that, I'd just like to say that I appreciate it's been an extensive look and a dive on this. It's premised by state legislation that understood that there is a situation, and people call it a housing crisis. Some people are offended by that language, but whether or not you consider it a crisis or not, there is in the state and in Milford a situation where it's hard for our children to stay because it's expensive, and it's hard for families to stay in this area if they want to retire because it is expensive. And this could be a way to help our own people. This is not necessarily trying to bring in a new cohort of people into the community, but I think primarily it keeps us all here. And I think for that reason, I am a very large and big supporter of the concept of the ADUs. That being said, I would, again, reach out to the board for their comments or questions, or if none, then I would close and hear a motion. Mr. Sadi.
Before you close, Mr. Chair, through you to Mr. Sulkus, the original accessory apartments regulation had that language that the chair talked about the common interior wall, comma, floor, comma, ceiling with habitable space on each side. I believe that's what has been in the original accessory apartments regulations when it was in place. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I'm searching the new regulation now, and I don't see that language. So I'm just going through the strikeouts now.
It's in the second paragraph before item 1.
Okay.
Sort of as an overview. I think it's just a.
You're talking about
An oversight in the words. I don't think the intention is to have a ceiling and a wall and a floor. I think it's one of any that is contiguous somehow with the primary structure.
I see what you're saying. Shall be
So the word
attached
"or"
by a
would be
common
necessary.
interior wall, floor, comma, floor, comma, ceiling with habitable space on each side.
So
Yeah,
I think you need the word "or" to distinguish that any one would be a sufficient condition.
you could do that.
Thank you.
Nothing further. Nothing further, Mr. Chair, thank you.
Thank you. Without questions or comments, we would close the public. Oh, Mr. Step.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, by allowing these regulations to go into effect, which includes the deletion of the provision for occupants of the accessory dwelling unit to be related by blood or affinity or some other method, are we opening the door to people renting out their ADUs for 5 days at a time? So in other words, rather than solving a housing crisis, you may be creating a different crisis.
I think David has explained that to us. A very good question, and I'm sure it's a concern of many people. The reality is the zoning board does not have any regulations that dictates how long you could rent something for, whether it's a half hour or a month or a year. So this does not change that. It just changes that you can rent space out in your existing home for whatever time you want, it's just whether you have a kitchen or not. I mean, that's the only thing that differentiates the present situation with a future situation, if this is passed, is that you can rent a space out with the kitchen.
If you have a house by the beach and you only have one kitchen, you can't occupy the house and then have another person, well, come in, I suppose, as a short-term Airbnb or some type. But because you have a separate kitchen, that opens the door to unfettered ability of the owner-occupant to have people who are not related by blood. This sounds to me like a tremendous money-making opportunity for people by the beach to have yearly Airbnbs, which is not the intent, I believe, of what you said earlier.
Yeah, good question. I don't think we're addressing that in this change of land use. I think that is kind of very separate. It's pretty much how long do you rent it for, and obviously we don't have at this point the ability to choose how long you rent something for. But good question for sure. Are there other questions or comments from the board?
You said David was able to explain the Airbnb a little bit. Is there more that he could say?
Say that again?
You mentioned that David had explained about Airbnb not being an issue. Can you explain that? Because I'm not kind of...
Yeah, I'll explain it, or would you like David to?
Well, you had said David had gone into it in the past.
He spoke to the issue, and he said that our zoning regulations do not, at this point, and probably don't have the ability to say if you own a property, how long you can rent it for, a minimum of a day, or a minimum of a month, or a minimum of a year. We don't do that in any circumstance, whether it's an individual property, a two-family, three-family, an apartment building. Zoning regulations don't address that. If you'd like David to say it, then I think he'll say the same thing. Is that accurate, David?
That's accurate.
Okay.
And I can add to that and say that you can have a roommate. There's nothing in our regulations that says you can't rent out, have a roommate in your house that you're, sharing the house with, and, they're basically paying you for a bedroom. Is that for a week? Is that for a month? Is that for a year? I mean, again, we have no control over that, and we have, basically, we have no legal interest in looking into that.
I agree, though. I do think it opens a door that's making me a little nervous, so.
Well, I think the door's already open. I think the reality is an Airbnb, you can rent one without a kitchen.
But the difference when you build apartments, the intention is to be separate apartments. This is squeezing in things in areas that weren't intended to have Airbnbs.
Well, you're right. This is what the whole thing is about. We feel, the state government felt, and the public seems to feel that there is a housing situation that would benefit the citizens of Milford to allow people to have an accessory dwelling unit in their home. And if there's other implications of that, they are there.
But I think before, when you had blood relative, it kind of made that less possible.
It's true. Yeah, Etan?
Yes, but on the other hand, you could do it anyway, so I'm not sure it's that big. I don't think it's that big of a deal. I think it's the way it's crafted, the way that the regulation is crafted, it's so narrowly tailored. I don't think you're going to have that problem under with the way that the regulation is phrased. That's why I'm in support of this language. I just want everybody to understand the potential issues that arise, but I'm still in favor of it because, again, it is narrowly tailored. In particular, the fact that it's attached, that I think changes the calculus. That we're not doing a separate garage with a separate structure above the garage. Here, it's part of the main dwelling. That creates a different dynamic than just if it's separate units, grandma pods, etc. So that's why this is acceptable. At least for me, the language here is acceptable.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, without objection, we'll close the public hearing, and I'd hear a motion.
Thank you, Chairman Quish. Regarding proposed regulation change 2210, I move to approve I move to approve with the following technical modification, which is in 3.1.1.7 definitions, where it indicates that the principal and accessory dwelling unit shall be attached by a common interior wall, comma, or floor, which would be the or would be added, comma, or ceiling with habitable space on each side, the or would be added, and access through a common living space from the principal dwelling to the accessory dwelling. This is the Planning and Zoning Board proposed regulation change 2210 for zoning regulations, Article 3, Section 3.1.1.7 regarding accessory apartments, that if passed, effective date February 10th of 23.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have further discussion on the motion? One thing I would ask is that there was staff language that included adding an additional parking space if there was an accessory dwelling unit. Was that in your motion or not?
That is definitely not in my motion.
Okay.
I will not ask to amend it. Thank you.
Thank you. So it was not in the motion and not in the second. So it wasn't in the motion. So motion and second without additional parking regulations. Is there discussion on the motion?
Mr. Chairman, I think the parking, Dave said that the police regulate parking, not the Planning and Zoning Board.
Well, planning and zoning says every individual single-family house has to have 2 parking spaces. So we actually have the right to do that.
Okay.
We don't have the obligation.
Okay.
So we have a motion and a second. Is there discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Meg, if you would call the roll.
Ms. Austin?
With the motion.
Mr. Castagnoli?
Yes.
Mr. Hirsch?
With the motion.
Mr. Cater?
I'm with the motion, but a little concerned, though.
Mr. Collegian?
With the motion.
Mr. Moore?
I was looking forward to the parking spaces, but I'm with this motion.
Mr. Sadi?
With the motion.
Mr. Zaharides?
Against.
And Chairman Quish.
I am with the motion. Motion passes. Thank you to the public for a couple of months of considered thought and effort. Okay, we do have a little bit left to do here, so if you go out quietly, let us do our work. So we have old business. Seeing none, we have liaison reports.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to the members of the board, I represent this board on the South Central Council of Regional Governments. One thing that's important for Milford to be aware of is that on our docket last Thursday, it was a resubmission for the Kmart Plaza, I think it's 695 Bridgeport Avenue. Any event, I recused myself and abstained from the vote, but the vote determined there was no conflict with the other area, so it's going to be back in front of us at some point. Secondly, most of you received from Susan materials regarding our ability to get education, and that was discussed at our last meeting. And for those of us that have signed up, I sent the schedule of events to David to pass out to the board members that did sign up. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Subcommittee reports. The subcommittee with regard to the merger issue that is in front of us has been discussed and will be brought forth. The POCD, we had a meeting last week, and we will have I don't know if you call it, sort of a fuller understanding of where our vendor is bringing questions and creating an interactive component to the last part of the POCD, which I'm looking forward to, and there'll be some future public engagement. And, you know, hopefully we'll have a similar interest in the public in trying to create a direction or tweak the direction that our current POCD is pointing us in. Next order of business is the approval of the minutes. Do I have a motion? Second? Without objection? That minutes are approved. Chair's report. Just grateful for the participation of this particular issue, and I hope that we can continue to engage the public and hopefully do their bidding. Staff report.
None this evening, but again, for those of you who haven't signed up for the training on March 11th, I would highly recommend it, and we will sign you up if you would like to attend. So please let me know if you could by tomorrow, because we have a lot of processing paperwork that has to get done ahead of time before March 11th. So please let me know if you're interested in attending.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. Is that going to be a Zoom or a webinar?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It's remote, so you can
But I mean,
be in your PJs and your bunny slippers.
No, but is it a webinar one way or two way?
I don't know. I know it's remote. I don't know what the platform is that they're using.
No, they did say it's Zoom.
It did say Zoom? Okay.
David, I'm interested, but I didn't respond because I thought I saw an email say John and I were signed up, John Mortimer and I, so I just assumed somebody took care of it. If not, I'll double check, but I am interested.
Okay, then we'll make sure that you're signed up.
Okay.
Yep.
Dave, can you sign me up too, please?
You got it.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Going once? Going twice? Come on, it's a really good seminar.
All right, well...
Jim, before you adjourn, just one quick question, and I don't know if I could ask this, but to do with the ADUs, can I say something about that right now? Just in the future, can we monitor it? Since we don't have the state mandated zoning regulations...
I'm sorry, Jim, I can't hear you.
Since we don't have the state zoning regulations, we have our own, and can we monitor it? And we could change things, right, if something gets out of control?
You're exactly right, and that's the kind of why we didn't opt in with the state regs.
Oh, and I agree with
because now
that,
we
yeah.
can change it again. Like, I would personally want to bring up a detached ADU. Not that I would win that argument or battle, but at one point, I think we did good work in order just to move it forward. And if in fact it is something that the community feels it's important to expand, then we could do that in a different iteration of the board.
The only other thing was, I'm a little at loss at what the intent of the regulation was for. I kind of liked it being family, helping kids out who can't afford to live here. I like that idea. I'm not crazy about the idea of Airbnbs and people now making money down the beaches. That's not my intent.
I hate it when other people make money.
Well, that's not why I would have voted in.
Anyway, I think our meeting is done.
Yeah, okay.
You and I can have this.
All right.
The guys who live across the street from the beach.
Yeah. we can have this conversation on a sidebar. But anyway, I appreciate your thoughts, and we did spend a lot of time on this. And Etan, you're welcome to speak.
Yeah, just to make it really simple, you can change a regulation at any point. We could change the EDU regulation to make it 1,000 square feet. You can do that a year, 2 years, 5 years down the road. And that could have been done whether or not, however we voted tonight. So you can always change a regulation. This had to be done because we had to conform with the state standards. So we had to do something because we opted out from the state.
Exactly. I think that perspective is accurate, and if a different iteration of the board or the community feels a different way, they can advocate for a change. Okay, motion to adjourn. So done.